Hi, welcome to the TeenPact Elected Officials podcast. Today we have on our guest, Caleb Hahn.
Caleb is a current TeenPact elected official serving as one of our 9 representatives. He is from Eugene, Oregon, and currently attends the University of Oregon studying business administration. Please welcome Caleb Hahn.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming today, Caleb. We really appreciate it. Just to kind of start off this episode and get a little backstory into you, could you tell us a little bit about your story, about where you're from, then how you kind of got started into TeenPact?
Yeah, I'm from Eugene, Oregon. I'm on the West Coast, one of the few TeenPacters out here. And I started TeenPact around my freshman year in high school. Didn't really know what I was getting into. I had heard about it from friends. They said it was a fun event, and I generally just liked going wherever my friends were going and thought it'd be a cool opportunity. And I wasn't fully against the idea of a politics camp. And so I kind of went into it with no knowledge of where I was going, but coming out of that first week of TeenPact, I couldn't get enough of it, and I really wanted to come back and try it again. And so ever since then, I went on to do 4 more years of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back to 3 years ago, I met you actually through campaigning, and I believe it was 2019 where we went to our first national convention. And just kind of noticing right off the bat, I noticed you're a very radiant and joyous person. And that was super coincidental since that year your message was radiant joy. Kind of looking back to that first year, coming into national convention, never been before. What was the decision process looking like to kind of decide to run with, you've never really experienced national convention before and you wouldn't know what it looked like. What kind of made you decide to run that year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a little bit hard to nail down. As a candidate who is coming into national convention without ever having previously been to a national convention or even an alumni event of any kind for that degree, you have very little knowledge of what actually goes on besides possibly watching the live streams or looking at the Instagram accounts of previous senators or representatives who are running for these positions. And so it's a little bit hard to understand what sort of a balance you need to set as you're coming into a campaign on whether you should or should not run. It ends up being I believe it was about a month before it was national convention time. I'd gone through my second year of TeenPact and had run for the position of senator my first year and then governor my second year. And after running for both those positions and seeing how much fun that was, I thought I might look at running in national convention. And in my mind, I actually didn't realize how big of a thing this was. I understood it was a next step up in the process of running for elected positions in TeenPact, but I didn't quite see the full spectrum of what that looked like and what all entailed. But I decided, hey, why not give it a shot? I enjoy this, and people generally like me as I've gone into these previously. My little knowledge, although, did not help me, but I learned along the way. Yeah, so I think all of that combined, it was kind of just a shot in the dark, but one that I was really glad I did. And even though it was a shot in the dark, I decided to go full blown and try and understand how much I could do to prepare myself for it. And I think overall I did a pretty good job starting off on that, though.
Yeah, for sure. That was an interesting national convention. You actually made it past primaries, which I was very impressed by, this being your first time and all. So kind of walk me through the process of when you got to national convention, boots on the ground. There's the elections hall just down the street. What did it look like the whole entire week as you kind of got to know the campaign process? Walk me through what that looked like.
The on the street campaign process, the in-person campaign process, it was a little bit different than I had expected. I'd seen a lot of people put so much effort and time into Instagram, and because I hadn't previously gone to national convention, I didn't really know what to expect or what to look for. So I'd done a lot of heavy work on Instagram, or as much as I could do and understood at the time. And then when I came in person, my general thoughts were to work with a couple of people on my team. I had a campaign manager, and then I had a bunch of people on a grassroots team who were helping me reach out. My original thoughts were to have people on the grassroots team go hand out posters and go put them up along walls and mark where they are so that we don't get points subtracted if some are left up by the end of the week. And then I had ended up buying a table in the elections hall, and I even had created merch, although I was just running for senator and it was my first year in. I was just kind of trying to play on all the areas that I'd seen people use tactics for in the previous years and thought that I might as well try everything out while I was at it. And so those were just a couple of my ideas. However, even though I had constructed a plan on how I thought it would look, I actually accidentally left all of my posters at home before I flew to Tennessee for a national convention. So we started in on this process on very much the wrong foot. My campaign manager and I, we didn't know quite what to do, especially because I couldn't find my campaign manager at all for about 3/4 of the first day when we were there, and she had flown in with half of the stuff that we were setting up for the campaign table in the elections hall and what we were considering for putting up posters and other items. And so all of these things together really made for a hectic start of the campaign process. But even though it was hectic in the beginning, everything came together over time. So although I was stressed and worried about it and felt like I was lacking material, you don't truly need all of these items to be able to have a successful campaign. They may help you and get your name recognition out, but you don't need to fully rely on those, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many times, just to make sure in total, did you run at National Convention?
At National Convention, overall, I have run 3 times. I ran my first year when I went to National Convention. I believe that was 2019. I ran in 2020, although not in person, as COVID-19 happened and this canceled the 2020 National Convention, and then recently in the National Convention 2021 year.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you definitely have a lot of experience running a campaign at National Convention. One of the things that Noah and I talked a lot about pre-National Convention, I know in conversations with other both elected officials and those who have run at National Convention in the past, one of the things that is the hardest to do, especially in person at NatCon, is yes, campaigning, yes, getting your name out there, running an effective messaging campaign, but at the same time, maintaining intentionality, maintaining genuinely seeking relationships and friendships, not just a vote. And since you run so many times at National Convention, could you speak a little bit to how you as a candidate can make sure that, yes, you're running a very, very good campaign, but at the same time, still being intentional with those you interact with at National Convention?
Absolutely. That is a great question, because the two are very disseparable. There's a fine line that you walk in between those. Yeah, it's a hard question, because coming into this, especially looking back at my first year running at National Convention, I knew nobody outside of my state. The majority of my people, even in my grassroots team, were from my state. So I didn't have many connections to reach out to or rely on as I was going into my first election. And I took that as an opportunity to really reach out and just get to know people. Coming into the week, I had set a goal for myself to just try to be as open and just natural as possible, not trying to lead off with talking about, hey, I'm running, my name's Caleb Hahn, can I have your vote? These questions which are abrupt and a little too forward in my mind. It's similar to if you have a sales official coming up and knocking on your door and trying to sell you a product immediately. You're generally not going to be inclined to want to receive anything from them, and generally will ask them to leave. And so a similar sort of way, I wanted to just be a person, first of all, to the people I talked to, be a friend first. And because I hadn't met anybody, I truly just wanted to meet as many people as possible. And so finding the line between there, other people can try and gauge and see and say what they think you're doing or whether you're truly being yourself. But generally, you just have to set your own intentions there and people are allowed to think what they can think, and you can try and clarify that, like, hey, no, I truly just want to meet you first, and then if you like me and you think that I'm a good candidate, feel free to vote for me, but you do not have to.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of looking backwards, so we talked about how you kind of ran your first year at National Convention, and then in 2020, the year that the elections were held virtually, you ran for representative. And how did that look like for your campaign? Since I've talked to a couple different people from that year that ran, and each one's kind of like different for how they decided to kind of make that interaction computer screen to computer screen. But what was your kind of general approach and strategy going into that election?
Yeah, that's also a good question. Yeah, it was an extremely interesting election. We've seen over time Instagram has become more and more important over the years. However, this election, I believe it was the most important, if not was the most important it will ever be in the election process, as you could not meet anybody in person if you had not previously met them before. So I put a huge emphasis on Instagram, even more than I had previously in the first election I had in 2019. One of the things that I'd also seen people do over time was do Instagram live videos or other interactions of the sort. Taking the time to try to really get to know your audience and know the people who are watching you, and seeing the process of the elections was really important, because it's really easy to see a lot of faces on a screen, and if you don't have a personal interaction or a personal connection with people, votes are not going to carry. Just because you have a certain amount of Instagram followers really does not mean anything in the grand scheme of that election, although that was the only thing people were able to really see you through. You even saw other candidates during this election. One of the elected officials, Max Zepeda, I knew he personally called many people and spent a lot of time on calls just talking to people, getting to know them, and really doing some groundwork, grassroots work himself. And I think that really was what carried him and others through this election, was that personal interaction, and lacking that during that year was a huge disadvantage to many. So I definitely think during that election, the biggest thing that I was trying to do was just really connect with people one-on-one as the main strategy.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Especially, it was very hard because I know I myself ran. I know Noah ran as well, and it was just a weird, very, very weird election, trying to, be intentional, be yourself over a Zoom call. I think it was a very unique experience, though. But kind of moving forward even more to this year's election. So obviously you are an elected official. You won a national convention this year. So could you tell me a little bit about your story this year? Why you decided to run a third time? What strategies you saw that, now you have experience running, so you knew it worked, you knew it didn't work. So maybe someone listening to this, they're thinking of maybe running for representative or senator at NatCon, and they don't really know where to start. They don't really know what strategies to use. And you, as someone who's run 3 times and even won 1 time, could you give a little bit of your story of how you ran a successful campaign at National Convention?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I immediately learned from my first year running that I applied and also did not apply in the 2021 election year running was, first of all, my first year running, I decided to run for senator. However, I didn't understand the difference between the representative and senator positions. I assumed that as there were fewer positions for senator, less people would run, and as there are more positions for representative, I expected more people to run. However, I did not consider the name recognition that may follow with those who run for senatorial positions compared to representative positions, and as I did not know anybody outside of my state my first year running, I couldn't compare my name recognition to others who were running that first year. So coming into the 2020 election, I decided to run for representative, although it would be fun to hold the position of senator, and I would love to have served TeenPact through this position. It made more sense to run for representative this year, in my opinion. So that's one of the first things that I decided to do. Secondly, as my first year, I had seen that posters do not carry that much sway. They may help with name recognition. They are not necessary. I decided to completely drop posters. I created no posters for that year. Additionally, although having a table in the elections hall is a great way to get your name out, I felt like I had an obligation to be at my table and have certain things for my table when I felt like the time required to create things for having an elections table wasn't giving me a large enough output of name recognition and interactions with people for it to be worth it for me. And so I decided to drop that all completely. I did continue to create merch the 2021 election year, and I did have that online, as well as having an Instagram account, which I felt was the best setup I had for an Instagram account. I'd taken a look at my previous years on Instagram and asked what was the best use of my time and what were people really looking for on Instagram, whether that be pieces about myself, pieces about my message, or pieces about what I would want to do as an elected official. And combining all of those years of work together, I would say one of the things, if to anybody who may be listening, who is thinking about running at national convention in the future, is it truly matters about how you appear to others, who you are as a person. I'm not saying to make up a character of yourself that you think other people are going to like more, but truly coming across as a genuine person who wants to meet people is the highest priority. That sounds like something I've said over and over again, but it truly is the highest priority thing in my mind that you should be setting to work on. As posters can help, as tables can help, Instagram accounts can help, but in the end, your name recognition is going to be the hugest thing by simply being there. You do want to set up certain things previously, like Instagram, to be a forerunner saying, hey, I'm going to be coming into this election, helping people to be aware of you. But then once it comes to the actual election process, a lot of people are going to be busy with their own things and seeing friends they have not seen in a while and meeting new people. And their first thought is not always going to be about the elected officials, the people who are running for these positions. As it may be a huge thing in the front of your mind, but to other people at a national convention, it may not be as big of a priority to be aware of these people. So taking that into account, just being aware of being intentional, being yourself as you're coming into this election, and not worrying too much about the physical items that you need to bring is definitely what I would say.
Yeah, looking at all of these years that you've spent running and cultivating campaign strategies, if there was one person who was kind of listening to this podcast and was thinking to themselves, hey, maybe I should run for maybe representative or senator next year, what advice would you give them for the campaign process?
I would say it's a little bit of a repetition of what I just previously said. I would say the things that you for sure need to be doing is firstly having an Instagram account. There are other websites or social media platforms that you can use, but as people are, for the majority, as most senators, representatives, and presidential and vice presidential tickets use Instagram as the way to spread their message, I would recommend using Instagram, because that's where people are going to go to find the people who are going to be running that year. I would put an emphasis on that, making sure to go out and follow a bunch of people so that they know that you're running. I would recommend, if this is a secondary year that you have run, or a third or a fourth, or however many years, create a new account first of all for this. If you create a new account, you are able to refollow people. If you are following with an old account, they're not going to notice you there as much as if you follow with a new account. That's just a little bit on the social media side. On the in-person side, again, you just want to be making sure you're talking to people in person. Take time with friends. Set time aside, of course, for friends and for time in the morning with God. It's really easy to set aside a lot of things that you are doing just to try to run, but you miss out on a lot of aspects of national convention, and actually can hurt your campaign in the process of almost trying to try hard your way through the entire event, which can hurt your interests at the same time. Yeah. And then lastly, like I said, I'm repeating myself, but just simply be yourself. Nothing is going to carry over as much as your personality, as your character. An elected official will be chosen on how much people, or how well people think that they will be able to lead the nation, whether they see that in your speech, in your actions, in your conduct, in your word. All of these things are going to reflect. So simply through how you interact with people, how you carry yourself, just all of these things combine together to really create an image for you. And so you want to be aware of what that image actually looks like.
I think that's great. I think the most important thing that you touched on, that you even said was the most important thing, is just being yourself. I think oftentimes we get in our heads that we need to be like the person who won last year, or we need to be this really good public speaker, we need to be something that we're honestly just not to win. And that's so not true. So many times, often I've seen someone who might be less of a speaker, less of a quote unquote leader or something like that, win because they were themselves and somebody was fake. So I would definitely just echo what you just said, Caleb, and just genuinely be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not, because people are going to see through that. People want to see you and want to know you and want to be friends with you for you. So don't try to put on an image just to get someone's vote, or just to maybe be liked more. But kind of just moving on a little bit, how, as someone who's both lost and has both now won, what advice would you give to someone who, maybe ran a campaign, is going to run a campaign? How do you think we can handle both winning and both losing a national convention election?
That is a very on point question. My first year, my first 2 years that I ran, I lost. For those of you who have lost an election, or who in the future may be listening to this podcast and have lost an election, it is okay to feel sorrow. First of all, I think is necessary to point out. At first, I felt like I needed to hold up a good face, or hold my head high, but it's okay to be sad that you lost. You've put a bunch of time into this, you've put a bunch of effort into this, you really cared about this, and if you're running, I'd hope that you'd care to win this position and be able to represent TeenPact as a whole, as a student body, as a nation. And so it's okay to feel a little bit down as you're experiencing this, because you put a bunch of time and effort into this. However, at the same time, you want to also be able to take your eyes off yourself. It's really easy to have the last couple days of National Convention completely be ruined by a loss of an election. And so it's okay to mourn your loss, but at some point you're going to have to move past that. There are things that are coming in the future. You have the possibility to run again, or if it is your last year, it is a great experience in and of itself. And so finding the joys in simply running and the entire process is something that I'd hugely recommend. And even before you run for an elected official's position, I'd recommend checking with yourself. How are you going to feel if you lose an election? Are you going to be distraught? Is this large enough to shake you or break you for a time period? Because if it is, I would ask you to rethink why you are running. What is the purpose of running? Because if it feels like it destroys you, that in my mind is an issue in and of itself. So I just recommend some reflection on that before you run, because I definitely felt like I experienced that after my loss my first year. And it's something that I learned going into my second year of elections. For those who have won an election, that is a huge thing to take pride in. Congratulations to you. You've done something that is very hard. There are many people running for this position, and you have made it. Congratulations. At the same time, though, as you are reveling in this, it is good to take pride in that. Make sure to look around to those around you who did not win this position. Like I said earlier, there's going to be a lot of defeat felt here. And you guys are all in this together. Although you guys are all running for these positions, as individuals. Together, we are a collective, we are a student body, and there is specifically those of you who are running, there's a shared commonality between you as you have put so much effort into this race. So treat them like brothers, treat them like sisters, spend time with them, and it's okay to mourn with them, to just be with them. Being aware of how the other people who are running are feeling is extremely important. Some people may not want to be around you. Some people may want to spend time with you. Just being very aware of how they're feeling, as to see how you should interact with them is really important. And then just giving them time. I think that's one of the biggest things in my mind that you should be aware of. Especially though, if you have one going on after National Convention, I would recommend to be very aware of what you say and what you do. You are not going to be constantly in the spotlight, as you are not going to be constantly with TeenPacters. However, your actions do carry impact. What you do, whether that be on social media, whether that be in person at alumni events, or if you happen to be a staffer or even a student at classes, the actions that you do are going to be seen and taken note of by those around you as you've been put into this authority position. Act above reproach. It's pretty simple, and is something that definitely I bet a lot of people feel like, oh, they easily do. But we have slip-ups. We all do. So just be aware of what your actions say for you, in place of you, to those around you.
I think that's really great advice, especially when you're talking about that verse. I don't remember which verse specifically it was in Matthew, but it talks about mourning with those who mourn, and rejoicing with those who rejoice. I think that's super important, regardless of if you win or lose. I know that was super important when I ran for rep last year. I lost last year, and then obviously knowing I ran for president and vice president this year and we won. It's so important to rejoice with those who rejoice, be happy for them if you lose, and then at the same time, if you win, mourn with those who mourn, because it's okay to be sad. It genuinely is. And humility is super important in both areas, whether you win or you lose. But kind of switching gears just a little bit, to now, obviously, you're not in TeenPact anymore. You attend the University of Oregon. One of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was, I think oftentimes in TeenPact, we get this idea of TeenPact is not a train stop, but a destination. And I think the purpose of the TeenPact and the intent and the heart behind TeenPact is for it to be a train stop on the way to the rest of your life, whether that's college, whether that's a job, whether that's a family, a career, whatever that may look like for you. It's not supposed to be an ending place. It's supposed to be a springboard to the rest of your life. And one of the things I think often gets lost in TeenPact is we spend all of our time in TeenPact, and then we go home, we go back into our communities, our schools, our churches, and we really lose a lot of what we learned in TeenPact, and we really don't apply it to our lives. So I was wondering, from a perspective of someone who has been in TeenPact this long and then is currently out, and obviously you're still an elected official, but you're not coming back next year. How could you really explain and how could you verbalize the impact that TeenPact has had on you? And then also, could you explain a little bit about how we leaving TeenPact can still have an impact on our communities, on our schools, and on the rest of our life?
Yeah, absolutely. TeenPact has left a huge impact on me. It's hard to verbalize, but TeenPact really taught me how to be a leader. That's a very obvious thing. TeenPact is a leadership institute, but it firstly taught me how to be a leader, and was honestly the first place I'd truly seen Christians worship and spend time with God in the way I saw at my first TeenPact state class. And that was one of the biggest things that pushed me in my relationship with Christ. I'd never seen something like this before. And I would say I was a lukewarm, half-hearted Christian before I came to TeenPact. Of course, I still have my spells now and then, which is not something to discount. But TeenPact really grew me in this fashion, showing me what does it truly look like to be a Christian? What does that truly look like to live out, which is going to carry on to the rest of my life for sure. Like I said, TeenPact taught me how to be a leader and what that actually looks like, and that leadership comes in so many capacities, to be aware of these circles around you where you lead, and to effectively use your time there and use your voice in these positions. Additionally, TeenPact helped me to become a better public speaker. Just in having to run in these positions and speak in front of different sizes of people and different groupings of people and answer different questions of varying difficulty, from whether you think that certain politics or different measures should be done in your state classes, to being asked extremely difficult questions like what is your favorite Disney princess on stage in front of 200 people. These questions really are going to force you into a different space than you have been previously, and I definitely felt that. And it definitely gave me a confidence in my public speaking ability and being able to come up with answers on the fly and come up with something that I felt represented me, my character, my nature, or my humor. And so I think TeenPact overall really gives you a springboard to jump into these other aspects with renewed vigor and renewed passion and self-confidence in who you are, who you were made to be, who you're called to be by God, and how we go out and do that. TeenPact really sets you up for just your future, whether that be you still in high school, whether you're going into college next, whether you are looking to do internships of any kind, anything like that. TeenPact really set me up for. Although I'm going to college, I feel like TeenPact really set me up to head off in any direction that I may have chosen. And then really quickly, could you rephrase again for me the second question you had?
Yeah, it was basically, maybe to simplify it, how can we not let TeenPact simply just be a mountaintop experience? How can we take from TeenPact what we learn inside TeenPact, what we experience inside TeenPact, and apply it to our lives?
Yes. One of my favorite words that I feel like is the root, at least for me, it may be different for others, on how we should do this, is firstly to be intentional. TeenPact, although when you're in it, feels like it will last for a very long time, and depending on when you start TeenPact, whether that may be you started in a one-day class and have gone all the way through till the end of high school, or whether you've started more recently, TeenPact doesn't last very long. And so being very intentional with your time in TeenPact and understanding what that looks like, and taking a moment to learn from each of your experiences, not just set it aside after the first class or second class or next alumni event or national convention, and then when you're back in a group of people similar to you applying it again. It's really important to realize that it's really on you. Your relationship with God, your interaction with others, it's not always going to bounce off of other people around you. You really have to take that into consideration yourself and be able to carry that yourself. Your relationship with God rests on you, and the people around you are not always going to look like TeenPacters. They are not always going to have the same political viewings. They're not always going to be Christians. They're not always going to be the same denomination, and many other categorizations that are going to set you apart. And understanding, what does that look like? How should I interact with people at other occasions, other events, other situations is really important. Because a lot of times I've had people talk to me about how they love the TeenPact experience and they want to learn how to make other situations like TeenPact. However, I don't think other situations need to be like TeenPact or should be like TeenPact. If every situation was like in a building motivational speech, building motivational speeches would lose their importance as they become the everyday dull normality of life. And so I think it's really important to be invigorated by TeenPact, but realize that that is not your everyday life. And how to carry on from this point, I would definitely say, is to just take a second before and after you are in a event or in TeenPact or any organization of the sort, and just really look at what you have learned, what you intend to get out of this situation, and then apply it in your relationship with God first, and then apply it to those around you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so inspiring. I'm so glad we got to hear your story today, and kind of, I think people will learn a lot from your past experience, both running and leaving TeenPact. Kind of looking ahead in the future, as you're kind of leaving TeenPact and you've left it, Where do you see yourself going in the future?
Yeah, no, definitely. As I go on from here, I am going to, at least at the moment, I plan to finish out all 4 years of college. This may change, of course. However, that is what I plan to do at the moment. And while I'm doing that, I'm going for a business administration degree. This may also be subject to change, but that is the plan at the moment. I wanted to go for a business administration degree because I felt like it covered a large amount of bases that I'm interested in. And at the moment, I am shooting wedding videography over the summers as a full-time job, which I'm really excited about. And I plan to apply much of what I've learned at TeenPact here. And maybe in the future, possibly coming into some political sort of field, however that may be, on a school district or something larger. We'll just have to see as time goes.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, Caleb. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us a little bit about your experience, both as an elected official and after, everything during going to college and doing all that you're doing now. So once again, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Elected Officials podcast, and stay tuned for another episode next week.